I'm kind of a mess right now, and I'm barely holding on together, but it's now a new year, so we can just pretend that the last year didn't happen, and we could just carry on with our lives and pray that everything gets better. Ooh. But before we get way too ahead of ourselves, let's take a little look back on the best and worst movies that I watched for the first time in 2021. Starting off with the list no one came to see, the movies that were not released in 2021 that I watched for the first time. And shockingly, I've only seen 10 films. There is no honorable mention for this list. And I'm going to be completely honest, I can't remember which of the two Sinbad movies which was which. Like, I have somewhat of a little bit of idea, and I felt that the Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger was the worser one of the two, per se. Granted, the special effects was pretty cool, and I don't know, I felt like I've seen better Sinbad movies than these two, and that's why they're number 10 and number 9. Number 8 is Never Say Never Again, which, the fact that Roland Atkinson is in this film, if I'm saying his name correctly, and the fact that when I went to immediately review the film afterwards, I forgot his character existed, just goes to show kind of how forgettable the Never Say Never Again is as a James Bond film. Granted, there was still one particular scene with a shark I really loved, and and the fight scenes weren't bad. I kind of wish there was some sort of opening title credits, but main title credits, but I guess they really wanted to be different from the Eon projections. So yeah, no, this movie's pretty low if I was ranking James Bond films, which I will be soon. Trust me. Number 7, The First Man in the Moon. The only reason I ended up watching The First Man in the Moon is it just so happens that the Blu-ray box set for the Ray Harryhausen animation is include this film, and I never even heard of it, went into it totally blind, and I kind of ended up liking it. I just like the way the setup is done, setting wise and all that, and then when they get to the moon, spoilers, I mean, that's part of the plot, First Men in the Moon, but weird title. But with an ending that made me realize, oh yeah, this is an H.G. Wells story adaptation, isn't it? Because it runs a little too similar to another H.G. Wells story. Cough, cough. Number 6 is Marnie, the Alfred Hitchcock film, and I'm not going to say any more than that. Number 5 is Step Up 3D, and unfortunately I didn't see it in 3D, and you may also be wondering why I saw Step Up free when I haven't seen Step Up 1 or 2 or any of the other thousands of sequels. It just so happens I was at a friend's house and they were just in the midst of beginning to watch the film, and I watched the film and I kind of liked it for what it was. Granted, I haven't really seen anything else Step Up dance wise, so this was kind of my first exposure to it, and the film wasn't terrible. I enjoyed it. Number 4 is Virus. This is a movie never even heard about. Only reason that I actually watched it is because my cousin wanted it he was trying to find this movie, and so I was able to track down a copy of the film for him for Christmas, and unfortunately, because I couldn't find a brand new copy, I got it used, and so I wanted to make sure the disc was good, so I watched the movie just to make sure that what I was giving worked. So that is the story of how I watched Virus. And Virus, surprisingly, for a movie I never even heard of, that came out in the 90s, it is quite good as a kind of survival horror isolated. Like it kind of, it's funny because it is, I think, produced by one of the people who produced Aliens and Terminator, and uh, with this movie, it's easy to see that connection, especially with the isolated horror nature of it, but also with the technology aliens, I guess you could say, part of it, and with a few other little surprises. Surprisingly, for a 90s film, the special effects really hold up in this film, especially the fact that I never even heard of this film prior. So it was a surprise, but a welcome one. Speaking of surprises, number 3 is High Plains Drifter. Recently, last year, I picked up a couple Clint Eastwood films through the Kino Lorber newer. I don't know how new the releases were, but they've been. I've been seeing them for a while, but I wanted to pick them up. And from the free films, my mom was really craving to watch a western, and she figured Clint Eastwood was a good place to from what I had readily available that isn't packed away from my move. And so we ended up watching High Plains Drifter. That was the one she chose, even though she's never seen it, and I never seen it, and well, my family basically never seen it. We went into this quite blindly, expecting, this maybe a stereotypical type of Western type film, and we got something else. Holy cow. Oh, it definitely kind of felt a bit like a Twilight Zone Western in a sense. Not to give it away or anything, but I was not expecting what we got with this film. So let's put it that way and end it on that. Number 2, They Came to Rob Las Vegas. I can easily see after watching this film why Quentin Tarantino does love this film. It is pretty great. Almost, you could definitely see some of the influences in Quentin Tarantino's other works, such as Reservoir Dogs, specifically. I'm definitely holding out for hopefully they get a Blu-ray release of it, because this is a film that I definitely think more people should maybe check out. I just really like the film. Number 1 is The Gentleman. That is a movie I kind of wish I saw when it came out. It was a really, really great film, great cast. Guy Ritchie kind of went back a little bit to his roots with this film, although I don't think it's as great as, say, the Sherlock Holmes 1 and 2 that Guy Ritchie's done, but I still enjoy the hell out of this film. Now for the lists you guys all came here to see is the movies that were released in 2021 that I saw for the first time in 2021. Starting off with the worst list, so we can appreciate the best list just that much more. So, starting off with the worst, there is no honorable mentions for worst this year. And a big reason for that is every movie I saw this year was good in some capacity. So I apologize, but I feel really bad for making the worst list this year for 5 films, because it's like all these films I thought were good or I enjoyed in some way, or was put a lot of effort into the film, and it's just unfortunately I had to put something for the worst list. So I apologize. There is some good movies in the worst list, if not all of them in a sense. So just want to get that out of the way before I begin. So number 5 is West Side Story. And Steven Spielberg does a tremendous job of remaking the original, though you could argue that it didn't really need a remake unless you were going to change something, but Steven Spielberg did pay it pretty close to the original. So There's nothing really new here in a sense, except for you get to showcase some modern talents, and the choreography was amazing, singing was great. It's like my problems with West Side Story is generally, I feel story wise, the second half of the film, so from the Rumble onwards, it just for me that was kind of my problem with the first or the original West Side Story. So that problem is still here as well, but the Steven Spielberg version, in my head, I'm thinking this is probably going to be the one I would prefer to watch if I had the choice between watching the original and the remake. It seems like the Steven Spielberg one's going to be my go-to version to watch, but it has been a long time since I watched West Side Story, the original, so I might have to rewatch it and confirm that for myself. Number 4 is Reminiscence. If I'm saying that correctly, Reminiscence? Yeah. This movie, I love the world, the atmosphere of the world and all that, and I do love the idea of the sci-fi elements of this film, and it's like this should have been almost a home run in a sense, but it just, I still enjoyed the movie, but maybe it could have been a lot better. Granted, setting and special effects was not the issue with this film. Number 3 is Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And once again, I think it's good and I enjoy it, but it's definitely a superhero B movie. I still enjoyed it, enjoyed the performances. Wish this was rated R, and I wish they really went far with it. And I wish they didn't tread so much of or relied heavily on the chemistry between Tom Hardy and Venom like they did in the first movie. But the first movie, it's understandable. The second movie, they could have continued it. They didn't need to. I just felt the whole Tom Hardy and Venom sort of splitting apart and going their own ways was totally unnecessary, and it just felt more like filler especially by the end of the film. So yeah, definitely the worst of the MCU movies this year. Let There Be Carnage also had the worst end credit scene of any Marvel movie in 2021, in my opinion, and it is totally unnecessary, especially after you've seen No Way Home. Number 2 is Halloween Kills. And I'm going to be honest, I liked the film. I thought it was good, but really kind of wish they did more with it, better with it. Yeah, you got some brutal kills and whatnot, and I feel like, especially with the success of the newer first movie, the 2018 one, I felt it kind of wasted a bit of its potential. And I definitely would not have done the movie the way it ended up, especially certain things such as the ending scene, as well as a bunch of other changes. But I'm not the one directing the film or making the film, so I don't really, me saying, oh, I would have done it so much more differently is kind of meaningless. But yeah, Halloween Kills, liked, but definitely could have been much better. And it's kind of sad. The scariest thing about that film is us, the humans, the people, the mob mentality. And I'm really sorry, but number 1 for the worst movie I saw this year, and it's not that it's a bad film. It is a good film. It is a good documentary. It's nothing like spectacular, amazing, and unfortunately, it is at the bottom of my list just because compared to every other film I saw this year, This was the one that I was like, yeah, it was a nice film and I enjoyed it as a fan, but somewhat pointless. Felt like, well, at least the cast and crew got a paycheck. It's kind of, I don't know what to say, and it is the Friends the reunion special for HBO Max. Movie documentary. It's literally like, I don't know. This is not exactly how I imagined a reunion, though there was some great moments in it, and it's just some of the other content that was scripted and stuff or made for it was like, why are we doing this? Like, I know, like I understand why they did it like this, and I do liked it. I did enjoy it, and I thought it was great seeing everybody back again. But it's just, unfortunately, it's the low end for me. I'm generally not a fan of documentaries. I do like documentaries, but like I usually find they usually end up near the bottom of my list, just in sense. So I apologize. I I couldn't really think of something that would be more deserving as a number one worst film. So, and anyways, if you're still watching this, here is my best list. Starting off with the honorable mentions for best movies that I saw in the year 2021 that was released in 2021. The honorable mention goes to The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. A great sequel, still keeping the characters, expanding on the characters and all that, and I enjoyed the film, and unfortunately, there was 10 other films that were better than it, and so I still felt The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard was definitely deserving of an honorable mention. So number 10 of the best, you know what this list is. Number 10 is Free Guy. And Free Guy, the reason it just pulled ahead of The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard is this was probably the nicest film I've seen this year. Like, this, it was something very strange because of the pandemic and movie theaters closing, reopening, stuff like that, and sort of just, hearing the news of the virus and all that. It's like the last year, two have been very hard, and so it's like, with all of a sudden it's like we get a movie where it's like the main character is very happy dappy, played very happy dappily by Ryan Reynolds, and his attitude throughout the film, it something about it just kind of made me smile throughout the film. Just, no matter how bad things were happening to him as a video game character, he just sort of, nudging things off, walking off. It's like, he gets hit by a car. It's like, yeah, all's good and happy. Everything is awesome. Kind of remind me a lot of the Lego movie in a sense, and it just, I don't know, it was a popcorn film for your emotions in a sense. Even though I disliked some of the ways they went around the video game aspects of it, or how it worked in the world, I still pleasantly enjoyed Free Guy, and I think it's deserving of number 10. Number 9 is Nightmare Alley. Nightmare Alley was a film that literally came out of nowhere for me, because I remember a couple of years ago when it was announced that Guillermo del Toro was going to do this film. The cast was announced for it, and I was like, okay, I'm sold. I have to see this movie. And then that's really all I've heard about the film. Nightmare Alley sort of faded from my memory in a sense, like, of when it was coming out or whatnot. And then all of a sudden, literally, I was looking to go see, like, I was catching up on the movies that I need to see before the end of the year, and I was trying to get to go see Ghostbusters, but then I was like, wait a minute, Nightmare Alley is out now? What? And so literally I didn't see any trailers or advertisements at all of this movie. It's just literally, I looked at Showtimes and was like, what the fuck? This is out? I was like, okay, I have to see it. And I did. And I'm going to be honest, amazing cast, maybe amazing performance. Bradley Cooper is absolutely going for the Oscar this year for acting. I should put an asterisk for acting. It felt like I literally watched an entire season drama miniseries that's like, I felt like I watched like a 6 or 8 hour miniseries in the span of 2 hours and a half. That's what this movie felt like. I didn't know where the story was gonna go, and it was like, oh, is it gonna stay here? And then it ends up not, and it's like, wow, okay. And it's like Gil del Toro, you could tell just from this adaptation that he definitely really likes the source material. It's a great movie, great drama. Highly recommend checking it out, especially if you like some or any of Guillermo del Toro's other works. Just don't expect it to be as standout or as memorable as, say, like Shape of Water or Pan's Labyrinth. Just expect it to be a good adaptation of a really of an older book. So it's kind of limited by what's in the book, and it's deserving of its number 9 spot. So number 8 is The Kingsman. I did love it, but it did feel like I got half of experience of a Kingsman film with this. Like, it didn't really feel like compared to the first two Kingsman movies, it feels like this was more of an appetizer than a actual full course meal. And though it is cool seeing a bit more, well, seeing a lot more of the backstory and how Kingsman sort of first formed and what they did, um, it's still a great movie. I enjoyed it, and great acting. As over the top and as it is, it's just, I don't know. I felt like this movie in some ways fell a little bit short, but I still liked it. I still enjoyed it. Also featured one of the most shocking sudden moments that I've seen in a film this entire year. That really kind of caught me off guard. Surprisingly, I don't know if I was just a little bit tired or whatnot, because I did watch two movies that day, and Kingsman was the second one. Um, but it really, I was like, wow. Number 7. I feel like this is going to be controversial. I gave number 7 to The Matrix Resurrections. Yes, when I went to see this movie, up until this point, I've heard the trailer, because I see a lot of movies in general, so the trailer did pop up several times, and though because it was The Matrix, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna close my eyes for the trailers, and thank God I did, because I viewed the trailer recently after I've seen the movie, and I'm like, wow, that trailer sounded better than what was the actual trailer visually. So don't let the reviews kind of ruin the experience of the movie for you. I think when I walked out of the theaters after seeing this movie, I actually thought this would be the best. This might be the best movie of the year. Like, it had that sort of experience, and I felt that I loved the meta-ness of the movie. Gave a lot of heavy Wes Craven's New Nightmare vibe, but for the Matrix franchise. And then I loved what happened story-wise, because it's not a reboot. It's literally, well, it kind of does walk the line between reboot and continuation. And I really like what is continued on after the events of the first three films. And I'm not gonna lie. If this movie was an FU to Warner Brothers, from the crew, I honestly, I do praise the decision to go through with it, because I mean there's several scenes that hit very close and is like, wow, I mean, are we watching real life right now? In a sense, but if this is not an FU to the studio, and they actually do have a plan for what the next Matrix one after this is gonna be, I kinda in a lot of ways want to see one more Matrix film, especially after this one, and I do want to see it concluded. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I really want to see what happens next, you know? Number 6 is Dune Part 1. Extremely well made. Like, here's the thing. I've never seen any previous version of Dune. I haven't read the book or anything like that. So, this is kind of my first time exposure to the Dune story in a sense. And I felt this adaptation was extremely well done. And I cannot pronounce his name. Dennis Villeneuve, the guy who did Blade Runner 2049, which is a masterpiece, by the way. Um, Excellent fit for the Dune franchise, and you can really see the passion he put into everything to make this film happen in a sense, and do it the way he always envisioned when he read the book and all that. And the problem is, this movie highly depends on the execution of part 2. As I'm like, this is going to be probably one of the best movies of the year, if not the best. And it's like, after seeing it, I'm like, I loved it and I enjoyed it, but it felt like I watched a extremely well-made video game demo, and the full version is going to be coming out a year or two from now. And it's like, well, crap, now I have to wait. And it's like, hopefully they stick the landing with part 2, because never in the history of films, whenever I see a film where it's like part 1, part 1 can still be viewed as a standalone movie and you still enjoy it for what it is. But Dune, it almost feels like without part 2 it's almost nothing. And it's kind of sad, because it's extremely well made, but it's like, you know, compared to others like Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2, it's like, I can watch one many times as well as the second one. I can watch them separately. Like, you still get a bit of a complete film with it in a sense. Pirates of the Caribbean 2 and 3, which was shot back to back. I can watch one or the other by themselves, and I still feel like I get sort of like a complete story on the standalone part. And it's like, Warner Brothers, I think, made a major mistake of not greenlighting this film for being shot back to back. And it's like, and that's kind of really unfortunate, because now they have to wait, go back into production, stuff like that, especially with the new viruses and whatever, and pandemic. It's like, part 2 might not be completed, or it might not be as good as the part 1 because of various factors. Like, there's a lot at stake, and it all relies on part 2. So that is why Dune is number 6. Number 5 is Last Night in Soho. Edgar Wright returns to his roots of horror, and once again, extremely well choreographed. Great editing, great, just everything about this film. Like, it's kind of hard to not like this film. Unless you're not a fan of horror. If you're not a fan of horror, it would be probably harder to watch. But it's not too bad as a horror film. Like, I actually kind of want to see if my parents would be interested in watching it, because it's definitely very you know, it does involve the 60s and You got a really great last performance by Diane Riggs. It's definitely great soundtrack. God, I really got to pick up that soundtrack. Out of all the Edgar Wright films I've seen, this is technically probably my least favorite of the Edgar Wright films. It's still another great Edgar Wright film. Number 4 is Spider-Man No Way Home. You'd think it would be a lot higher on this list, but it's just for me, I did feel, though it was awesome, I went into it with high expectations, and the movie delivered on those high expectations, but I don't know. It's just, I feel on a technical level, this movie wasn't made as well as, say, or it wasn't structured. Like, it did feel, it was a real test of the too many villain problems that you might have heard in critics' reviews of other older superhero films when a film has too many characters it's trying to deal with. And it's great, it's amazing, it's touching, it's unbelievable. It's like a fever dream that we're in a universe where this movie exists. I loved it, but unfortunately it wasn't good enough for the top 3 in my opinion. Number 3 is The Suicide Squad. Yes, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is amazing. It's the only, other than another movie that's higher up on this list, Suicide Squad was the second most viewed movie that I saw in 2021 that was new. I saw it twice in theaters, once in IMAX, once non-IMAX. It was extremely enjoyable, extremely well made, and I think this is one of the best movies of the year. Number 2 is No Time to Die, and No Time to Die is the movie I watched the most this year. A total of 3 times in theaters, mainly due to I had to see it early on for my review by myself, and then I've had family and friends being like, "Oh, I need to see it. Can we go?" And then it's like, "Okay." And so, No Time to Die is absolutely epic conclusion to the Daniel Craig era of James Bond films. Technically, if it wasn't for my inclusion of recutted films under different names, this would have been number 1 of this year that wasn't a extended recut of a older film. If I didn't give away what number 1 is. Great score, great send-off, everything was great. It's like, though I do criticize the movie in certain aspects and what they did with certain things, and it's not the things you'd think would be I've had a problem with, check out my review. But No Time to Die is very deserving of number 2, if not number 1 of the year. So that leads me to number 1, which is, if you haven't guessed it already, Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I'm going to be honest, though originally I had Zack Snyder's Justice League lower on the list, it's just the more I thought about it, the more with what we ended up getting with it. The fact that it's a miracle that we even got this film in the first place. I mean, No Way Home had a similar thing, but the difference is No Way Home didn't have a theatrical release that was heavily reshot and under a different director several years ago, and then now we got to see the version that Zack Snyder was attending to make. I still can't believe several scenes and stuff that were cut out of the theatrical version from Zack Snyder's version. I unbelievable, and I think it was awesome, epic. It is the best movie of 2021. I want to know what you think is the best movies of 2021. Maybe even some of the worst. What did you think? Are you surprised I left out certain films that I watched this year that didn't really make the cut of either list or stuff like that? Let me know in the comments below. I want to thank a special thanks to my Patreons. And by Patreons, I mean the one, the only, the first of the early 88, Randy Bain. Thank you very much for your support. And look at that, your name's on screen. Woo! Thanks again for watching. Check out my other stuff. They should be appearing somewhere on the screen right now. I hope to have my Marvel Year in Review 2021 reviews. I hope to have that video out, hopefully, before the end of the month. It's gonna have to see how my work schedule works. So, thanks again for watching.